Could you ever fathom a pain so deep it makes you question everything you thought you knew about family? Because that's exactly where I found myself, burying my 6-month-old daughter, Emily, while my parents celebrated at my brother's lavish pool party. They actually told me it was just a baby and that his party mattered more. Just, how do you come back from that? My name is Abigail, I'm 29, and I stood alone at Emily's tiny funeral. My baby, my world, gone at 6 months old to SIDS. As I watched her small white casket being lowered into the ground, my mother's words echoed in my ears, a cruel, relentless torment. It's just a baby. Your brother's party matters more. In that moment, something inside me didn't just break, it shattered into a million irreparable pieces. You might wonder how anyone could make such a choice, or what kind of consequences followed. Well, let me tell you, they had no idea of what was coming next. Growing up, it was always clear who the favorite was. My brother, Jason, 3 years older than me, was the golden child. From the moment he was born, our parents, Margaret and Richard, built a family dynamic around his every achievement. His successes were celebrated with extravagant parties, while mine, they were acknowledged with a polite nod, or sometimes, not at all. I remember when Jason made the soccer team in grade school, our backyard was packed for a massive barbecue. That same year, I got into the honors program. That's nice, Abby, they said before asking Jason about his next game. This pattern, this constant, crushing comparison, continued for years. Jason's average grades were effort and well-rounded. My straight A's were simply expected. By high school, I'd accepted my role. I'd built my own life, excelled academically, and found friends who actually saw and valued me. That's when I met Michael in college. His family was a revelation. Warm, supportive, genuinely interested in his life. It felt alien to me, almost theatrical, until I realized this was what normal, healthy family love looked like. Michael and I dated through college and married 3 years ago, both 27. He's an architectural engineer, and I'm a pediatric nurse. We bought a starter home, intentionally about 40 minutes from my parents. The distance was my silent rebellion. When we announced our pregnancy, Michael's parents were over the moon. They immediately started planning a baby shower, asking about nursery colors, sending us articles. My parents? Oh, that's nice. Did Jason tell you he might get promoted? They came to the shower Michael's family organized, but mostly talked about Jason's recent Bahamas trip. Jason's life, you see, was a meticulously curated path of success. A prestigious marketing firm, a luxury condo, increasingly attractive girlfriends. My parents showered him with financial help for his condo down payment, something they never offered me, despite my student loans. When I once gently brought it up, my mother's reply cut deep. Jason has a more expensive lifestyle to maintain. You and Michael are more practical people. Emily was born on a snowy January morning. She had Michael's dark hair and my blue eyes. Holding her, a love so intense it physically hurt bloomed in my chest. Michael's parents arrived within hours, bearing gifts, tears of joy. My parents came the next day, stayed exactly 45 minutes, and left because my mother had a hair appointment. Over the next 6 months, Michael's parents visited weekly, sometimes just to give us a break. They took thousands of pictures, made a special photo album, told us what a beautiful family we were. My parents?
Twice.
The first was 3 weeks after Emily was born because my mother's book club friend wanted to see the baby. The second, because they were in the area for one of Jason's work dinners. They held Emily awkwardly, like a ticking bomb, visibly relieved when she cried, and I took her back. Despite their indifference, I sent them weekly photo updates, her smile, her rolling over, her laugh. My mother would occasionally reply with a thumbs-up emoji. My father never responded at all. 2 months before Emily died, Jason announced his engagement to Stephanie. My parents immediately began planning an elaborate party. My mother called me daily with updates. The party was scheduled for the same weekend as Emily's dedication at our church, a ceremony my parents had already committed to attending. When I reminded my mother of the conflict, her voice was cold. Oh, we'll have to miss the baby thing. This is Jason's engagement, Abby. That's a once-in-a-lifetime event. I wanted to scream. A baby dedication only happens once, too. But I swallowed the words, as I always had. A week before Emily died, she had a slight cold. Nothing serious, her pediatrician said. I took time off work. By the weekend, she seemed better, eating, smiling her gummy smile. I had no idea those would be our last days together. It was a Tuesday night when our world imploded. Michael and I put Emily to bed around 8 p.m. She'd been completely normal. We watched TV, went to bed around 11 p.m. The baby monitor stayed silent all night. Too silent. When I woke at 6 a.m. for my early shift, something felt wrong. Emily usually woke around 5. I rushed to her nursery, the room we'd painted soft yellow with woodland creatures. In her white crib, Emily lay still. Too still. Emily, I whispered, touching her cheek. It was cold. What followed is a blur of disjointed fragments. My screams, Michael's thundering footsteps, his frantic CPR, my trembling fingers dialing 911, the dispatcher's unnervingly calm voice, paramedics swarming our peaceful home, their grim faces. The ambulance ride, Emily's motionless body. Hospital lights, a doctor with kind eyes delivering the news. I'm so sorry. Your daughter died from what appears to be sudden infant death syndrome. Michael collapsed. I stood frozen, unable to process it. It couldn't be real. We'd done everything right. Every SIDS guideline. Yet there we were being asked if we wanted to hold our daughter one last time. We spent hours with her, memorizing her face, holding her cold little hands, kissing her forehead. The chaplain came. A grief counselor spoke to us. Funeral arrangements were mentioned. The words meant nothing. Eventually, I remembered my parents. With shaking hands, I dialed my mother. Mom. I choked out. Emily died last night. SIDS. We're at the hospital. A pause. Then, flatly. Oh, Abby, that's terrible. No gasp. No tears. No immediate promise to come. Just a casual acknowledgement. We need to arrange a funeral. I continued, desperate for her to understand, to offer support, to be my mother. Yes, I suppose you do. Let us know the details. That was it. No questions about us. No offers of help. Michael's parents, in stark contrast, were already on their way, dropping everything. The next few days were a blur of paperwork, decisions, overwhelming grief. Michael and I were ghosts. His parents handled everything, the funeral home, flowers, food. My parents called once to ask the funeral time. Friday at 11 o'clock, Greenview Cemetery. I told my mother. Friday, she repeated. Oh dear. That's the day of Jason's pool party. We've already committed to that. I thought I'd misheard her. Mom, this is Emily's funeral. Your granddaughter's funeral. I understand that, Abby, she said, but we can't cancel on Jason now. All the arrangements are made. Everyone's coming. You understand, don't you? No. I didn't understand. I could not comprehend. No, Mom, I don't understand. Please explain it to me. She sighed, an exasperated crackle through the phone. Abby, I know you're upset, but think rationally. It's just a baby. Your brother's party matters more. Emily was only here for a few months. You can always have another baby. But Jason's engagement is important to his future. The words hit me like physical blows. Asterisk, it's just a baby. Your brother's party matters more. You can always have another baby. Asterisk, in that moment, the profound hurt hardened into a cold, sharp clarity about who my parents truly were. I see, was all I could manage before hanging up. Michael found me on our bedroom floor, phone still clutched in my hand. When I told him what she'd said, his face contorted with pure rage. He wanted to call them, scream at them, but I stopped him. I felt hollow, beyond anger. It doesn't matter, I whispered. It's always been this way. I just never wanted to admit it. The morning of the funeral was cruelly beautiful, bright, clear. I stood in front of my closet, staring at the black dress I'd bought, trying to process I was picking out clothes for my child's funeral. As we drove, I checked my phone one last time, a desperate hope fluttering that my parents had changed their minds. Nothing. Instead, a text from Jason. Sorry about the baby. Hope the funeral goes okay. Excited to see everyone at the party later. I turned my phone off. Emily's casket was impossibly small. White, with silver handles and pink roses. It looked like it should hold a doll, not my child. We stood in the cemetery's Garden of Angels, a section for infants. I felt utterly detached. Michael gripped my hand so tightly it hurt, his face pale. His parents flanked us, his mother openly weeping, his father steady but red-eyed. Friends, colleagues, even patients' families from the pediatric ward were there. My childhood friend, Teresa, had flown in from Chicago. My college roommate, Lily. The gaping void left by my parents and brother was conspicuous. Everyone politely pretended not to notice, but I caught the questioning glances, the hushed whispers. Michael's mother placed a protective arm around me when people asked, smoothly changing the subject. Pastor David spoke about Emily's brief life, her deep impact. Some souls, he said, accomplish their purpose quickly. During the service, my phone vibrated. I ignored it until the final prayer. Instagram notifications. Jason had posted photos from his pool party. My parents were prominently featured, smiling, champagne glasses in hand, celebrating while their granddaughter was lowered into the ground mere miles away. When it was time for the burial, I nearly collapsed. Watching that tiny casket descend made Emily's death real in a way nothing else had. This was final. This was forever. My baby was gone. I would never hold her again. Michael's father had to support him as he threw the handful of dirt. Michael's mother held me as I did the same, my entire body shaking with sobs. Later, at our house, people gathered. Food, flowers, well-intentioned words that couldn't touch my grief. I moved through the rooms like an automaton. In quiet moments, I'd catch myself listening for Emily's cries through the baby monitor we hadn't put away. Each time, the realization that I would never hear her again hit me anew. That week passed in a haze. I took leave from work. Michael tried to go back but came home early, unable to focus. We moved through our house like ghosts, barely eating or sleeping, talking hardly at all. The silence where Emily's babbling, crying, laughter should have been was deafening. My parents didn't call, text, or visit. Michael's parents, however, came daily. They brought food, did laundry, sat with us. They respected our need for space but ensured we weren't alone for too long. Michael's mother gently suggested grief counseling. His father handled the mountain of paperwork that follows a death. 7 days after the funeral, my phone rang. My mother's number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity compelled me. What could she possibly say? "Abby, how are you?" she asked, her voice casual, as if we'd simply gone a week without talking, as if nothing monumental had happened. "My daughter died and was buried without her grandparents present," I replied flatly. "How do you think I am?" "Now, Abby, there's no need for that tone. We're calling to invite you and Michael to Sunday dinner. It would be good for you to get out of the house, don't you think? Jason and Stephanie will be there. They can tell you all about their wedding plans. It might take your mind off things." Take my mind off things? As if my child's death were a minor inconvenience to be distracted from with wedding talk. "I don't think we'll be able to make it," I said. "Abby, you can't just shut yourself away. Life goes on. It's been a week already." A week? A week since I buried my daughter, and my mother thought that was sufficient time to move on. "I have to go," I said, and hung up. Michael found me on the bathroom floor, staring at the wall. When I told him, his expression darkened. "They can't be serious," he said. "They are," I replied. "They absolutely are." Against my better judgment, I agreed to attend Sunday dinner at my parents' house 2 weeks after Emily's funeral. Michael was reluctant, but I felt a desperate need to see them face to face, to understand how they could act as if nothing had happened. We arrived at the suburban Colonial where I'd grown up, a house meticulously maintained for guests. My mother greeted us with our kisses, careful not to smudge her lipstick. My father nodded from his armchair, barely looking up from his newspaper. Jason and Stephanie sat on the couch, wedding magazines spread before them. "Abby, Michael, come in," my mother chirped. "Dinner's almost ready." Jason was just showing us the venue. It's absolutely breathtaking. No mention of Emily. No acknowledgement of our loss. We sat stiffly. Jason dominated the conversation with wedding budget details, guest lists, honeymoon options. My parents hung on his every word. I noticed a new photo on the mantle, Jason and Stephanie at the pool party. The same party they'd chosen over Emily's funeral. During dinner, my mother served roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, Jason's favorite. The conversation revolved entirely around Jason's promotion, Stephanie's dress shopping, my parents' ideas for the rehearsal dinner. Finally, during dessert, I couldn't take it anymore. "Did Emily's funeral interfere with your pool party?" I asked, my voice cutting through discussion about wedding photographers. The table fell silent. My mother's smile froze. "Abby," she said, with a nervous laugh, "let's not bring up unpleasant topics at dinner." "Unpleasant topics?" I repeated. "You mean my daughter's death? Your granddaughter's funeral that you skipped?" "Now, Abby," my father interjected. "What's done is done. No sense dwelling on the past." The past. I stared at him. "It was 2 weeks ago." Jason rolled his eyes. "See? This is why we didn't want to bring it up. You always make everything so dramatic, Abby." I stared at him, incredulous. "Dramatic? My baby died. And none of you came to her funeral because you were too busy having a pool party." "It wasn't just a pool party," my mother said defensively. "It was a celebration of Jason and Stephanie's engagement. We'd been planning it for weeks. We couldn't cancel at the last minute." "But you could miss your granddaughter's funeral," I countered. "You could tell me it's just a baby and that I can always have another one." Michael, who had been silent, put down his fork with a clatter. "I've sat here trying to be respectful, but this is beyond belief. Do you have any idea what Abby has been through? What we've been through?" My mother looked affronted. "Of course we do. We're very sorry for your loss. But life must go on, mustn't it? Dwelling in grief isn't healthy." "It's been 2 weeks," Michael said, his voice dangerously quiet. 2 weeks since we buried our daughter, and you haven't once asked how we're doing. You haven't offered to help. You haven't acknowledged our pain in any way." My father cleared his throat. "We thought it best to give you space." "Space." I laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like indifference. It looks like you care more about Jason's engagement party than your own granddaughter's death." "That's not fair, Abby," Jason said. "Mom and Dad had already committed to my party." "They made a choice, Jason," I said, "and they chose you, as they always have." A tense silence fell. Stephanie looked deeply uncomfortable. "Actually," my mother said, finally, "several relatives asked where we were during the funeral. We told them we couldn't attend due to health issues. Your father's back, you know." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. They had lied to the family about why they missed Emily's funeral. They were ashamed enough to lie, but not ashamed enough to actually show up. "You lied," I whispered. "Well, we could hardly tell them we were at a pool party, could we?" My mother replied, as if this were perfectly reasonable. "People wouldn't understand." "I don't understand," I said, standing up. "And I never will." Michael and I left without finishing dessert. In the car, he held my hand as I sobbed, the full weight of my family's betrayal finally hitting me. Over the next month, our marriage strained under the dual burdens of grief and family tension. Michael and I began seeing a grief counselor specializing in infant loss, Dr. Patrice. During one session, she asked about our support systems. "Michael's family has been incredible," I said. "Mine less so." When I explained what had happened, Dr. Patrice's professional demeanor slipped, revealing shock, before she composed herself. "That sounds incredibly painful," she said. "Have you always felt your parents favor your brother?" That question opened a floodgate. Week after week, I unpacked a lifetime of subtle and not-so-subtle favoritism. The missed dance recital for Jason's soccer practice. The forgotten birthdays that coincided with his events. The college fund half the size of Jason's because girls usually get married and have a husband to take care of them. Dr. Patrice introduced terms like golden child and scapegoat, explaining the dynamics in narcissistic family systems. With each session, I gained clarity. This wasn't just about the funeral. This was about a lifetime of being treated as less than, culminating in the ultimate dismissal of my most profound loss. What do I do with this knowledge? I asked Dr. Patrice. How do I move forward? That depends on what you want, she replied. Some people maintain limited contact with boundaries. Others find they need a clean break. What feels right to you? I thought about my parents' casual cruelty, about the moments of grief I'd experienced alone while they celebrated my brother. I thought about Emily, who deserved grandparents who valued her life, who would have moved heaven and earth to honor her death. I said slowly, I need them to understand what they've done. Not just to me, but to Emily, to her memory. Before I can decide about our future relationship, they need to face what happened. And if they can't or won't acknowledge it? Dr. Patrice asked gently. Then I'll have my answer. That night, I told Michael, I need to make them understand. I need them to feel a fraction of the pain I felt standing at that funeral alone. Michael looked concerned. What are you planning? Nothing destructive, I assured him. Just the truth. The truth they've been avoiding for years. I'm worried about you, he admitted. Confronting them might make things worse. Worse than losing our daughter and being told it doesn't matter because it's just a baby? I asked. Worse than standing alone at her funeral because a pool party was more important? I don't think that's possible, Michael. He held me close. Whatever you decide, I'm with you every step of the way. That night, my decision was made. The time for silence was over. I didn't want revenge, not exactly. I wanted acknowledgement, recognition of the pain they'd caused, an understanding of the damage they'd done. I wanted them to feel the weight of their choice, to see it clearly. And above all, I wanted to ensure they could never rewrite history, never pretend they'd been supportive when they were anything but. My first step, declining the invitation to Jason's engagement party. It arrived in a thick cream envelope with gold embossing, my mother's touch, no doubt. I texted a simple response. Michael and I won't be attending. Still grieving our daughter's death. The phone calls started immediately. My mother, then my father, then even Jason. Abby, you can't miss Jason's engagement party, my mother insisted. Family needs to stick together during these events. Family needed to stick together at Emily's funeral, too, I replied. That's different, she said dismissively. This is a happy occasion. I'm not in a place to celebrate right now. It's been over a month, Abby. You need to move on. I ended the call without responding. My father's call was similar, guilt and manipulation. Jason's call was the most surprising. Mom and Dad are upset you're not coming, he said. Can't you just show up for an hour? It's important to them. Was Emily's funeral important to you? I asked. A pause. That's not fair. I barely knew her. Whose fault is that, Jason? You visited her exactly once in 6 months. She was your niece. He stumbled. Look, I'm sorry about what happened. It's awful. But life goes on, right? You and Michael can try again when you're ready. Try again, as if Emily were a failed experiment. As if any future children could replace her. I won't be attending your party, I said firmly. Congratulations on your engagement. With that immediate pressure handled, I began my research. I read books about family estrangement, narcissistic dynamics, and grief. I joined online support groups for parents who had lost children and, to my sad relief, found my experience wasn't unique. Many others had faced insensitive comments, thoughtless actions, and painful betrayals from family during their darkest hours. One evening, I pulled a box from my closet, a collection of evidence I hadn't realized I'd been gathering my whole life. Birthday cards with generic messages, or worse, referencing Jason's achievements. Photos from family events where I stood at the periphery while Jason was center stage. Text messages showing patterns of neglect. I created a timeline documenting this pattern that had culminated in their absence at Emily's funeral. It wasn't for them. It was for me. A way to validate my own experiences after years of gaslighting and minimization. Next, I reached out to extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins who had attended Emily's funeral. I didn't volunteer information. I just asked open-ended questions about their understanding of the situation. We were told your father's back was acting up, my Aunt Judith said, and that your mother needed to stay home to care for him. Did that explanation seem odd to you? I asked. A pause. Well, yes. I remember thinking it was strange they couldn't make it even for a short time. But who am I to question? Everyone grieves differently. What if they weren't grieving at all? I asked quietly. What if they were at Jason's pool party instead? The silence on the line was deafening. Similar conversations with other relatives revealed the extent of my parents' deception. They told consistent lies, creating a narrative where they were victims of circumstance, rather than people who had made a deliberate, callous choice. After 2 months of preparation, I was ready. I texted my parents. I'd like to meet with you to discuss moving forward from everything that's happened, just the 3 of us. This Sunday, at 2 p.m. at your house. My mother replied immediately. Wonderful. I'm so glad you're ready to put this behind us. I'll make your favorite lemon cake. The casualness of her response, the assumption that I wanted reconciliation without acknowledgement, only strengthened my resolve. The night before the meeting, Michael held me as I rehearsed what I wanted to say. Are you sure about this? He asked. You don't owe them an explanation for cutting contact, if that's what you decide. I'm not doing this for them, I explained. I'm doing it for me. For Emily. I need to speak my truth, to stand up for her memory. If I just disappear, they'll rewrite the narrative. They'll tell everyone I was too consumed by grief, too unstable. I need to make it clear exactly why I'm making this choice. I understand, he said. Just remember, whatever happens tomorrow, you have people who love you, who really love you. I held him tighter, grateful for his unwavering support. The next morning, I placed a framed photo of Emily in my purse, along with my documentation and a letter I'd written expressing everything I needed to say. I dressed carefully in a blue blouse, Emily's favorite color, and the necklace with her birthstone Michael had given me. Ready? Michael asked. I took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. My parents' house looked exactly as it always had. Immaculate lawn, trimmed hedges, fresh flowers. I sat in my car for several minutes, gathering strength. Finally, I took a deep breath, grabbed my purse, and walked to the front door. My mother answered, wearing a floral dress and pearls, as if this were a social call rather than a reckoning. Abby, come in. Your father's in the living room. I've just taken the lemon cake out of the oven. The house smelled of lemon and sugar, a scent that had once meant comfort, but now felt like a mockery. My father sat in his usual armchair, newspaper folded neatly. He stood when I entered, giving me an awkward pat on the shoulder, the closest he ever came to physical affection. Good to see you, Abby. You're looking well. I wasn't looking well, but my appearance had never been of particular interest to him. Let's have some cake, my mother suggested, heading for the kitchen. Then we can talk. Actually, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I'd prefer to talk now. My parents exchanged a glance I recognized from childhood, the one that said I was being difficult. All right, my mother conceded, settling onto the couch. What did you want to discuss? I sat opposite them, placing my purse beside me. I wanted to talk about Emily's funeral. And why you weren't there. My mother's smile tightened. Abby, we've been through this. We had a prior commitment. A pool party, I said flatly. An engagement celebration for your brother, my father corrected, as if the terminology made a difference. I'd like to show you something. I pulled out Emily's photo, a professional portrait from when she was 4 months old. She was wearing a pink dress, her blue eyes bright, a gummy smile lighting up her face. I placed it on the coffee table between us. My parents glanced at it uncomfortably. This is your granddaughter, I said. This is Emily. The Emily whose funeral you skipped to attend a pool party. The Emily you referred to as just a baby. The Emily your son, my brother, visited exactly once in her entire life. Abby, my mother began, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished. For as long as I can remember, you have made it clear that Jason matters more than I do. His achievements, his milestones, his happiness always took precedence. I accepted that. I built a life with people who valued me, despite your indifference. But when you chose to skip Emily's funeral, when you dismissed her death as insignificant, you crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. I pulled out a folder. I've been thinking about this a lot, trying to understand if this was an isolated incident or part of a pattern. I think the evidence speaks for itself. I handed them a printed timeline dating back to my childhood, with specific examples of their favoritism toward Jason and dismissal of me. Forgotten birthdays because of Jason's soccer tournaments. My college graduation dinner cut short because Jason had a date. The substantial financial support they'd given Jason compared to my token assistance. My parents looked at the papers with mingled confusion and defensiveness. "What is this supposed to be?" my father asked. "It's a record of your choices," I replied. A pattern that culminated in the most painful day of my life, when I buried my daughter alone while you celebrated with Jason. "You weren't alone," my mother protested. "Michael was there. And his parents." "Yes, they were. Thank God for them. But my parents, Emily's grandparents, chose a party over her funeral and then lied to the family about why they weren't there." My father's face reddened. "We didn't think it would look good." "No, it wouldn't look good," I agreed. "Because it wasn't good. It was cruel. It was selfish. It was the clearest possible statement of your priorities." I pulled out my phone and showed them the screenshots. Jason's Instagram post from the party, timestamped during Emily's funeral service. My mother sipping champagne while I listened to the pastor speak over my daughter's casket. My father laughing with friends while Michael and I threw dirt onto our baby's grave. "Do you have any idea what it felt like to see these after the funeral?" I asked, my voice finally breaking. "To know that not only were you absent, but you were celebrating?" My mother's composure finally cracked. "What do you want from us, Abby? We can't change what happened." "No, you can't," I said. "But you can acknowledge it. You can stop pretending it was acceptable. You can recognize the pain you caused." "We're sorry you were hurt," my father said stiffly. "That's not an apology," I pointed out. "That's placing the blame on me for being hurt, rather than on you for your actions." A tense silence. My mother looked at my father, clearly expecting him to fix this with his usual authority and dismissal. But even he seemed to recognize his tactics wouldn't work. "What is it you want us to say?" my mother finally asked, an edge of frustration in her voice. I pulled out the letter I'd written, my final piece of evidence. "I don't want you to say anything. I want you to listen. This is what I need you to hear." I unfolded the paper and began to read. "Dear Mom and Dad, I'm writing this because I need you to understand what your choices have meant to me. When Emily died, my world collapsed. Everything I knew, believed, hoped for was shattered. The only thing that could have made that pain worse was facing it alone. And that's exactly what your choice forced me to do. When you told me that Emily was just a baby and that Jason's party mattered more, you didn't just miss a funeral. You invalidated her entire existence. You told me that my child, your granddaughter, was disposable, replaceable, unimportant. You told me that my grief was inconvenient, my pain exaggerated, my loss negligible compared to Jason's celebration. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of a lifetime of being treated as less than, of having my experiences minimized, my achievements overlooked, my needs dismissed. I've spent my entire life trying to earn the love and attention you give Jason freely, never understanding that the problem wasn't me. It was you. I'm not writing this to hurt you, or to extract an apology. I'm writing because I need you to know that I see the truth now. I see the pattern. I understand that this will never change because you don't want it to change. And knowing that, I need to protect myself and the memory of my daughter from further harm. For now, I've decided to take a step back from our relationship. I need time and space to grieve Emily without having her existence diminished. I need to heal from not just her loss, but from the additional trauma of your response to it. I need to build a life surrounded by people who value me and who would have moved heaven and earth to be present on the worst day of my life. If someday you're willing to truly acknowledge what happened, to take responsibility for your actions without excuses or deflections, to commit to change, then perhaps we can begin to rebuild. Until then, this distance is necessary for my well-being and for honoring Emily's memory the way she deserves. With both sadness and resolve, Abby. When I finished reading, my mother was crying silently, mascara tracking down her cheeks. My father sat rigid, jaw clenched, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of something I'd rarely seen: uncertainty. "You can't be serious," he finally said, cutting us off over one missed event. I folded the letter carefully. It wasn't one event. It was the final event in a lifetime of events. And I'm not cutting you off permanently. I'm stepping back until you can acknowledge the reality of what happened and commit to change. "This is ridiculous," my father insisted. "Everyone has favorite children. It's natural. We've done everything for you." "Robert," my mother interrupted, her voice uncharacteristically sharp. She was looking at Emily's photo on the table. Really looking at it, perhaps for the first time. "Stop." The room fell silent again. My mother reached for the photo with trembling fingers. "She had your eyes," she said quietly. "Yes," I replied. "She did." "I never really looked at her," my mother admitted, her voice barely audible. "I was always so busy with Jason's things, with the engagement plans." My father shifted uncomfortably. "Margaret, don't. Abby's upset. But she'll come around. She always does." "No," I said firmly. "Not this time. This isn't something I can just get over. This is my line in the sand." I stood, gathering my purse. "I've said what I came to say. The ball is in your court now. I hope someday you'll understand what you've done and make different choices. Until then, I need this distance." As I turned to leave, my mother called after me, her voice breaking. "Abby, please don't go like this." I paused at the door. "I'm not going anywhere, Mom. I'm right where I've always been. You're the ones who weren't there when it mattered most." I walked out of their house with a strange mixture of grief and liberation. In the car, I sat for a moment, hands shaking but my mind clear. I had spoken my truth. I had stood up for Emily, for myself, for the reality of our experiences. Whatever happened next was up to them. As I drove home, my phone began ringing with notifications. Jason, apparently informed of our confrontation, was sending angry texts, accusing me of upsetting our parents. Several extended family members, however, were sending messages of support. They'd learned the truth about the funeral, either from my conversations or through the family grapevine. My Aunt Judith's message stood out. "I had no idea, Abby. No idea they chose a party over Emily's funeral. I'm heartbroken for you and ashamed of my brother. Whatever you need, I'm here." By the time I reached home, word had spread. The narrative my parents had carefully constructed was crumbling under the weight of truth. They would need to face not just me, but the judgment of the extended family who had believed their lies. Michael was waiting for me, concern etched on his face. "How did it go?" I sank into his arms, emotionally exhausted but oddly peaceful. "I did it," I said. "I said everything I needed to say." "And?" he asked. "And now we wait. Either they'll recognize what they've done and try to make amends, or they won't. Either way, I've done what I needed to do for Emily, for myself." That night, I slept better than I had since Emily died. Not because the grief was gone, it would never be gone, but because I'd lifted the additional burden of pretending my parents' behavior was acceptable. I'd honored Emily by insisting her life and death mattered, regardless of what they believed. 6 months after that confrontation, I stood in the garden we'd planted in Emily's memory. Spring had arrived, bringing daffodils and tulips around the small angel statue that marked the center. Michael worked beside me, carefully placing new mulch around perennials. "It's looking beautiful," he said, standing to wrap an arm around my waist. Emily would have loved playing here. The pain of those words was still sharp, but no longer debilitating. "Yes," I agreed. She would have. In the months since, we had established a new normal. 3 times a week, I attended a support group for parents who had lost children. Twice a month, Michael and I saw Dr. Patrice, working through our grief as a couple. We had converted Emily's nursery into a memorial room. Not a shrine, but a peaceful space with photos, her favorite toys, a comfortable chair where we could sit and feel close to her. My relationship with my parents had transformed as well, though not in the way I might have expected. After our confrontation, they retreated into silence for several weeks. Then, surprisingly, it was my father who reached out. A handwritten letter arrived exactly 3 months after Emily's death. "Abby," he wrote, "I have never been good with emotions or admitting when I'm wrong. But after reading your letter again and again, after seeing the timeline you created, after hearing from relatives who attended Emily's funeral, I can no longer deny the truth of what you said. We were wrong. Terribly, unforgivably wrong. Not just about the funeral, but about many things over many years. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve the chance to try to make amends. But I want you to know that I hear you, and I am sorry. Truly sorry." It wasn't a perfect letter. It didn't address everything, but it was the most genuine acknowledgement I had ever received from my father that he had caused me pain. My mother's response came a week later. A small package containing a custom-made ornament with Emily's name, birth date, and a pair of angel wings. The note inside read simply, "I should have been there. I will regret that choice for the rest of my life. I'm so sorry, Abby." These gestures didn't erase the past. They didn't undo the damage or bring Emily back. But they were steps. Small, hesitant steps toward acknowledgement and potential healing. We established careful boundaries. Monthly dinners, initially just my parents and me, later including Michael when he felt comfortable. Ground rules included no dismissing Emily's memory, no changing the subject when grief surfaced, no comparisons to Jason's life events. Jason himself had been another surprise. After initially reacting with anger, he showed up at our door one rainy afternoon in April. "I've been thinking," he said awkwardly, standing on our porch, "about what happened, about Emily's funeral, about everything really." He brought a small pink rose bush to plant in Emily's garden. As we dug the hole, he admitted, "I never really thought about how things looked from your side. Mom and Dad always made such a big deal about everything I did that it seemed normal. I didn't realize what you weren't getting." "It wasn't your fault," I told him. "You were a child, too. We were both shaped by their choices." "Still," he said, patting soil around the rose bush, "I should have been at her funeral. She was my niece. I'm sorry, Abby." These moments of acknowledgement didn't erase the grief, but they lightened the additional burden of feeling unseen and unheard. They created space for true healing to begin. As summer turned to fall, I found myself drawn to volunteer work with a local organization supporting parents who had experienced infant loss. My nursing background gave me professional insights, while my personal experience allowed me to connect in a way textbook knowledge never could. During one support session, a young mother named Rachel broke down, describing how her in-laws had suggested she just try again, barely a month after losing her son. "They don't understand," she sobbed. "They act like he was replaceable, like any baby would do." I took her hand. "I understand. My parents missed my daughter's funeral for a pool party. They told me she was just a baby and that my brother's engagement celebration mattered more." Rachel's eyes widened. "What did you do?" "I stood up for my daughter's memory," I said. "I made them face what they'd done, and then I focused on healing myself, with or without their understanding." "Did it help?" she asked, standing up to them. I thought about it. It didn't bring Emily back. It didn't erase the pain of burying her alone. But it honored her. It said to the world, her life mattered. Her death mattered. And that helped me heal. Working with these parents became my purpose. Not replacing Emily, nothing could do that, but creating meaning from the devastation of her loss. Each family I helped was a tribute to her brief life, a way of ensuring that her impact continued. Michael and I began tentatively discussing the possibility of another child, not to replace Emily. We were clear with each other and our therapist about that, but to expand our family. The conversation was fraught with fear and guilt. Would loving another child diminish our love for Emily? Would every milestone with a new baby be shadowed by thoughts of what Emily would have been doing? I'm scared, I admitted to Michael one night. Terrified, actually. Me too, he said. But I think Emily would want us to have room in our hearts for another child. Not instead of her. In addition to her. My relationship with my parents continued to evolve slowly. There were setbacks, moments when old patterns emerged, when they slipped into comparing my life unfavorably to Jason's, when they seemed to forget the lessons. But there was also growth. My mother began asking about my volunteer work with genuine interest. My father created a small scholarship fund in Emily's name at the children's hospital where I worked. During a family gathering, I overheard him talking to a cousin who'd recently had a baby. Treasure every moment, he said, with unusual emotion. Every single moment matters. I learned that lesson too late with my granddaughter. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect, but it was progress. On the one-year anniversary of Emily's death, we held a small remembrance ceremony in our garden. Michael's parents were there, steady and supportive as always. My parents came, bringing flowers, standing awkwardly but respectfully at the edge of the garden. Jason and Stephanie attended briefly, placing a small teddy bear near the angel statue. As we released biodegradable balloons into the sky, I felt Emily's presence, not supernaturally, but in the impact she had left on all our lives. In her 6 short months, she had taught us about unconditional love. In her death, she had taught us about the fragility of life. And in the aftermath, she had taught me about the power of standing up for truth, about setting boundaries, about honoring grief rather than rushing past it. I had lost my daughter. That would always be true. But I had found my voice, my strength, and a new purpose born from that devastating loss. For those of you watching who have experienced a similar loss or betrayal, I want you to know that healing is possible. Not perfect healing, the scars remain, but enough healing to find joy again, to find purpose, to build a life that honors both your loss and your future. If Emily's story has touched you, please consider supporting organizations that help families experiencing infant loss. And if you've faced family betrayal during your darkest moments, know that you're not alone. You have the right to set boundaries, to demand respect for your grief, to insist that your pain matters. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to stand up to family during a time of grief? What helped you heal? Your experiences might help someone else who's walking this difficult path. Remember, honoring your truth isn't selfish. Sometimes, it's the most important thing you can do for yourself and for those you've lost. Be gentle with yourselves. You deserve that kindness.